You're listening to the Prosperity Report Love and Money podcast. Find out what every couple needs to become a winning team in love and money. We bring you actionable ideas from expert therapists and experienced married couples, helping you stay happily married longer. Stay tuned until the end. We'll leave you with a tip you can start using today in our 5-minute activation segment. Now here's your host, best-selling author, speaker, and psychotherapist, Kanae Corder.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's episode. I'm so excited about it because we are going to talk about the challenges of mental health on a relationship. And we're going to go really deep because we have an amazing therapist on our show today who specializes in children with mental challenges, but can also talk about the challenges on relationships. Suzanne is also successfully married for many, many years. So we'll also talk about how she did that in business, married, and a therapist. Lots going on. So we're going to go really deep with Suzanne and get some of your questions, the questions that you probably don't even know you have, answered. So, hey, Suzanne.
Hi, Kanae, and thank you for the lovely, lovely, lovely inflation for my ego. That's a great way to start out Sunday.
You know that's what we do for each other.
Yes. And if people haven't met you, you're a very strong therapist in your own right and with such a big heart. Yeah.
Thank you. It's so awesome to work with. It's like you guys are humble, but powerful at the same time. And that's a rare mix. And I love working with you guys as well.
I'm so glad.
So I like to start every episode with one question. And that is, what is your idea of prosperity?
Prosperity to me encompasses, but it's not limited to, of course, physical health or mental health. Mental health goes right in here, right? I mean, both of those. So if you have a hit in one of those areas, you're compromised.
Yeah.
So prosperity to me, it has less to do with money, although, I like money as much as the next person.
Yeah.
Because it buys options. It buys you a certain amount of freedom.
Exactly.
Yeah, prosperity for me personally is when I feel grounded. And that's when I feel like when I have spiritual abundance, then everything seems to overflow.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it, especially that grounded part. Because we get so out there, we're just floating, doing whatever, letting the wind take us. And we're like, where am I? You turn around and you're like,
I know.
I don't know even where I am.
I know, right? And I use the term, it's the burden and the blessing. Because we can do that and kind of get pulled out into the ethers, it's the blessing of being a therapist because we can go to pretty much anywhere our patient goes. But the burden is we have to have that tethered to us, and we ourselves have to be grounded.
Yeah.
Or who the heck are we going to help? And people would walk in right away and go, okay, this chick's a nutcase. She needs more therapy than I do.
Yes.
Right?
And I have seen that.
Well, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. That was kind of loosey-goosey,
But every answer usually is. Like, that's what I usually get because prosperity means different things to different people. And it's like prosperity soup, it's like a combination of everything. It's not like a steak, right? It's not just the meat. It's like this combination of things.
It's
and
a
usually,
complexity.
Yeah, prosperity is pretty complex. But you know it when you have it and you're like, this is it. You feel like that comfy pair of shoes that you can put on.
Yeah.
So I love that. But I love your answer because of the mental and physical health and how money buys you options and the grounding. Like all of that together does sound very prosperous.
Well, it's so important for listeners to understand about mental health and how it does impact everyone. And I'm not trying to take away your, intro. It just made me think that, again, if you're lacking in mental health or financial, those are really challenging areas for everybody, not just the person who's has a mental health issue.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. And that's where we're going with this episode is how a mental health issue affects a relationship. I have,
Mm,
I know, right? I
mm.
have a saying that the person with the most problems has the most power. Let's equate that word problems. Let's shift that to mental health.
Yes.
So, how have you seen, and I know this is going past a whole bunch of other questions that I probably should have
I'm
started with, but I'll go
good.
all the way to the deep question.
I'm ready. I have my
You know
seat
how we
on.
do.
Yeah.
But how have you seen mental health take the power in a
Mm.
relationship?
God, that's such a beautiful question. And it's so complex to respond
Hmm.
to that. But the bottom line is this: if one person in the family has a mental health issue, everybody in the family has a mental health issue.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yes, oftentimes we can see a patient, and the one with the mental health issue, they wield a lot of power over everyone else in the family. And I've even said to patients, younger patients, I'm like, so basically what you're telling me is you're holding your entire family hostage, right? Because the
Yep.
patient says, oh, but I can't stand it when my sister goes through a ton of Coke and she leaves the cans on the counter and she gets a break because she's a sick one.
Yeah, that's a great point you bring up because it's almost like when you've been given that break enough, you use that because
Mm,
you know you have it, right?
right. I would have.
Yeah, it allows you, your brain gets smart. Your brain is like, "Ooh, I know what I could do," and they'll let me
Mhm,
get away with it.
mhm.
And so there's really no payoff for improvement. It's really no payoff for healing.
Right.
The payoff is in staying unhealthy.
Mhm. And
Wow.
I think the other part of the scenario is not just maybe that children impact parents or partners or however their family dynamics appear, but I think sometimes children, and I'm talking my definition right now for listeners, is
Mhm.
maybe between like the ages between 7 and I'll say 25.
Okay.
So I'm going past the, children phase, but if they're living in the home, they're still kind of an adult child of the home, especially if there's mental illness, which we
Hmm.
see a lot, right? But the
Yep.
other part is that I've also seen parents who are very invested in keeping their child mentally impaired because they don't want to have to look at their life or their marriage.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. So oftentimes the child or the patient who has the challenges, it's like as if they are martyring themselves
Yeah.
to stay in that place and not have their own life, to keep the parents from getting divorced, to pull the focus all back on them so the parents aren't fighting.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's really interesting, isn't it?
Yes, because again, it sounds like the payoff isn't staying unhealthy. The payoff
Mm,
isn't to stay well because if you get well, the rest of the family kind of falls apart because now we look at all these other issues when the
mm,
mental health is the issue or the challenge and we can all focus on the mental health and then
yes.
that's gone. Now we got to look at all the other dysfunction that's happening because that
Yeah,
was so much bigger. When that went away, it took the light, and shined it on all this other stuff.
absolutely. And it's the light that gets shined on all the other stuff. It terrifies the parents.
Yes.
The parents are
Hmm.
like, no, we don't have that problem,
Right.
right?
And you
All
could
their
forget about.
defenses,
Hmm.
work it on me. Just fix my kid. Here's a check.
Right. Yeah. Which is a great point because where I hear you kind of going is that the child becomes the patient
Mhm.
because there's so much other unhealthy things going on. They blame
Oh,
it. The
yeah.
child becomes the scapegoat. Like, let's just blame everything on the child's behavior. But really, the
Mhm.
child's behavior is a symptom of
It's
the
a
other.
response.
Yes, a
Yes.
response. Yeah. Hmm.
No
Talk
symptom. That's great.
talk about that a little bit more if you can.
Yeah. Wow. So it's a paradigm shift in how we look at children with mental health issues. But the problem, again, is that sometimes the child needs to stay sick so that mom and dad can pull it together and focus completely on the child. Because that's oftentimes where parents can agree.
Yeah.
Especially if you have a high risk child that has a heavy suicidal ideology going on, parents can pull their stuff together for a short period of time to gather around that child.
Yep.
But after the crisis is gone, and the kid knows this, as soon as the crisis is gone, everybody quits paying attention to me. And if they're not paying attention to me, the family could fall apart. And I've had kids actually say, patients say, if I get better, you don't understand what will happen. I'm like, okay, why don't you tell me about that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, then my mom will start screaming at my dad and she'll start drinking. And then my dad will go back to his girlfriend and my sister, cuts herself. I mean, it's like, okay, that's pretty big. And I always say, no wonder you're invested in staying sick. No wonder.
Yeah.
Like you said, Kanae, and I'm taking the long way around your question, but yes, oftentimes, at least what I've seen, and I've been doing this game for a fairly long time, but what I see often is that the child's behavior is absolutely a symptom of the family's dysfunction.
Yeah, exactly.
So the child's acting out all the crazy that's going on in the family.
So here's another question. How then do you, because the child is the patient, how do you begin to have the parents see that? Because truly they should be also in therapy, but maybe they are, maybe they aren't. And if they aren't, they're probably not seeing that at all. The insight just might not be there. Not that they're purposely putting the blame on the child. They could be doing that totally unconscious. How then does the therapist help the parents see that what the child is doing
But they're part of the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
I say collect your money first as a therapist. Hey, y'all need to pay up front. You may not like what I'm about to say.
Right.
Right? And so many times, if a kid is really impaired mentally, parents, they don't want to go there. They don't want to hear anything that I may have had something to do with this.
Yeah.
So how do you go there as a therapist? Very gently and very slowly. Because as a therapist, we get what the family dynamics are pretty early on.
Yep.
So when I have lay people ask me, why does therapy take so long? I'm like, the therapist doesn't need that amount of time. The patient does.
Yep.
And it's holding a very safe container for the parents and the child and saying, so I noticed when, your child said this, you looked really irritable and agitated. I'm wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about that. Oftentimes, a parent will break down in tears. And so that's their soft spot. And that's where you have to kind of zoom in and get them to talk about what's getting triggered.
Yeah. And I know that sometimes what happens is after a while, the child then begins to resent the parents and feel as if they're trying to fix them. And the child begins to know, I'm not the problem. At some point, the child learns that they're not the problem. So why is everybody trying to fix me?
And Kanae, this has been really helpful for me when I work with, again, that age range of 10 to 24-ish. The kids will say to me, why? This isn't about me. This is about all the other stuff that's going on. I remind the patient, look, I'm just trying to help you get through this event of living at home and living like you're living next to a nuclear toxic waste site in that kind of environment. And you're not going to get better in the same environment that got you sick. By the way, I want to be clear with our listeners too. We're not talking about something like schizophrenia. We're talking or bipolar. We're talking about maybe kids that have really severe anxiety and some OCD stuff. And oftentimes, when you dig a little deeper with the OCD stuff or anxiety, that kiddo has PTSD. They're recovering from a big event that was painful. And guess who forgot to mention that in opening history taking when parents are there? Guess which one forgot to mention? It's mom or dad.
Yeah.
Or partners or a gay partner. So I'm like, you guys forgot to mention that you had this horrible car accident and, that's really big.
Yeah. And that's a great point because I was going to go there. Trauma a lot of times can be the catalyst for a
Mm.
mental health challenge where, because,
Mm.
just reading technically, a very small part of the population is truly schizophrenic.
Yes,
It's a very small part. But, working at the hospital, I saw so many schizophrenia diagnoses that I was like, really? Is it this prevalent? Or
Yeah.
is something
Is it just the water down here?
or is this a misdiagnosis? But a lot of times trauma can show up as schizophrenia, as bipolar, as anxiety, and
Absolutely.
let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, gosh, Renee, like you're really good at this stuff.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
you are really good about it. You're a good interviewer.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Well, where should I begin? I mean, I guess
Yeah, we could begin with the traumatic experience
and
and
how
then
trauma. Okay. It's very interesting. And I was reading something or listening to something that sometimes people have the gene that could possibly get potentiated. Like, let's say a parent or an auntie in the family had bipolar. Well, bipolar is pretty prevalent and common. And I think, I could be wrong, I'm not a doctor, I'm putting that out there now. But I think bipolar and anxiety and ADHD, they may not be on the same gene, but somehow they're related.
mm,
So let's say this for an example. Let's say you have two kids from different families. Jane from family one, she has the gene to become bipolar or super, super anxious. But that gene never gets activated because Jane, so far,
mm,
has had a really easy life.
yeah,
So that gene doesn't get potentiated.
yeah,
Now we're going to take Sarah from the second family and a big trauma. It doesn't matter what the trauma is, same trauma. She has the gene, but that trauma then unlocked that gene. And now
yeah,
that gene is getting potentiated, and it's the perfect storm.
right,
And
got it.
everything comes together. It's always like one of those two things. Is it nature? Is it nurture? We don't
Mm-hmm.
know what the child's history is, right? Until you talk to parents, blah, blah, blah. But boy, that's a really good reason why us as therapists have to have a solid history,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because every
yep.
time I don't do that, I get bitten. It's like 6 months into our work. The parent goes, oh, yeah, well, I didn't tell you, but when she was in second grade, her coach molested her. I'm like, oh, what?
Yeah.
Right?
This changes everything.
Yeah. And mom will be like, well, no, I think she's fine. I mean, she talked to the school guidance counselor and she never talks about it. Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
Really? And so here we are today with the kid who smokes pot, who cuts herself, but is very bright, right? Academically, they get it. I'm
Right.
like, oh, mm-hmm.
Yeah, and a lot of times I'll also find, and you tell me if you see this too, where there's a physical thing too, like maybe their knee is constantly hurting, right? Because,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and it's that trauma trapped in a part of their body, and the body is trying to tell them, hey, let's work on this thing, but it doesn't
Oh,
know
yeah.
how to tell them. So it does it by giving them pain, constant pain in a certain place in their body, because that's where the trauma is trapped. Have you seen that before?
Oh my gosh, I see it in myself.
Yeah.
Oh
I
gosh.
know, right? I
Yeah.
know.
So, now we're getting into the work. We're talking about Carl Jung, who's a
Yes.
very well-known Swiss psychiatrist who studied under Freud. They had like a divorce in their relationship. But now we're getting into Jungian concepts. So for any of our listeners out there thinking, okay, that's pretty woo-woo. No, this is based in traditional psychotherapy, these
Yeah.
thoughts. And Jung said so many psychosomatic issues, they're psychosomatic, but that doesn't mean we should not take them seriously. So,
Mm-hmm.
because the body remembers every trauma. And if
Yep.
we don't find a way to release it in a healthy way, it does get stored in certain areas of the body. And then they're in for therapy for a while.
Yeah.
So again, if people think that's too woo-woo, if anybody out there gets migraine headaches, that's psychosomatic. If
Mhm.
anybody has acute acid reflux,
Yep.
that's psychosomatic. We've worked with young children, right, who go to the first day of school and they vomit or they pass out. Most of the time, again, we're always striving to rule out underlying physical causes. So that's why I'm always asking the parent, when's the last time your child has had a complete physical? Because we need to rule out all of that stuff first. Right?
Right.
But then there it is. It's like, wow, so that happened and here it is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like in the book, the body keeps the score.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know, it really talks about how it gets lodged basically in a certain part of your body. And a lot of times, once you release the trauma, then you no longer have that physical pain. And I know this for sure because I had this happen to me and released trauma. And what I thought was carpal tunnel wasn't. The trauma was released. My hands were fine. Because I had worked with my hands for so many years, it made sense that I would have carpal tunnel. But
tell our listeners why you worked with your hand. You weren't just knitting.
No, I worked in the beauty industry. I was a barber for many years. As my sister is a hairstylist, and she's one of those people who knew from like 12 years old what she wanted to do.
Wow.
And I was one of those people who didn't find out until like 40 what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I did pretty much everything. Like anything somebody was making money at or looked like they were having fun at, I was like, cool, I want to do it. Well, my sister was totally enjoying this idea of being a hairstylist. So I worked as her assistant for many years, shampooing, hair.
Yeah.
So, working with my hands. And then once I was in college, I paid my way through college working in the salon. And after I finished college, I was making like $20,000 a year. And all my hairstylist barber friends were making 2-3 times that. And I was like, what the heck?
Yeah.
I'm the one with the college degree.
Well, I'm thinking you were also a gymnast, earlier,
Well,
right?
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's also a lot.
Yeah, right. In our childhood, me, my brother and sister, we did a lot of extracurricular activities, gymnastics, tennis, basketball, ballet, jazz, tap, everything. My mom had us in pretty much everything just so we'd be well-rounded and kind of figure out what our thing was.
Beautiful.
And and that was a lot on the body. So it made sense that I would have some sort of ache and pain. I did a lot, right?
Absolutely.
And I didn't go to therapy until after deciding that I wanted to be in the therapy industry. Knowing that I wanted to be a psychotherapist, I felt like I needed to now have, even though I felt like I needed therapy before, I didn't actually execute on it until
because you don't have to until your feet are put to the fire.
Right, exactly. Especially in my instance where people are building you up so much, like you are wonderful, you're great, you're amazing, that you're like, oh, I'm good. I'm cool.
Well, that's a very powerful bonding language, right? When you know that somebody truly thinks you're amazing, like I do.
Yes.
Don't we all want to be fed, and we all want to sit in that space of love, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want our listeners to say, well, I get migraine headaches, and it's only because my parents got migraine headaches, so I've got the gene. Yes. And if you didn't have other kinds of stress, maybe those migraines would have never happened for you. So that's just a really simple example that I think people, including myself, I go, oh, yeah, okay, I get it. That makes sense now.
Yeah. It'll at least prompt them to do a little bit more research themselves because maybe this concept is new to them. And
exactly.
Right. And so it'll at least prompt them to do just a little bit more research themselves. But I do want to circle back a little bit on the mental health challenges on the relationship. You mentioned you having your own challenges, physical, mental, whatever they were. How has it helped you grow in your relationship?
You're talking about like having my own.
We all have our own stuff. Like I talked about my stuff. You mentioned you've had stuff in the past.
Sure.
And since we're kind of talking about how the person with the challenge may have the power in a relationship, knowing that you have that power, how do you use your power for good and not evil?
Well, I think we should end this because I don't know. No.
Yes, you do.
No, sorry, Kanae. Well, again, I think that's the blessing of therapy. Is therapy gets you in touch with your ego. The ego, that's kind of your social mask. That's your competitive nature. That's your part of you that's like, has to always check their makeup, even at the gym. Okay, I'm going to raise my hand. That's all ego driven, right? Or
Yes.
somebody's like, I'm going to have straight A's in school, or I'm going to drive a Hummer, a brand new one. Ego, ego, ego. Well, my therapist will say, because I've stayed in therapy for 18 years now. And Barry Williams, who's an amazing therapist, Jungian analyst out in Taos, he will say to me, Suzanne, all of those answers, all the textbook stuff that you have read and about how thinking your way out of the problem, and he specifically does not like many aspects of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy,
Okay.
because he says, according to Barry, that logic, it's very satisfying to the ego and the intellect. And he'll say, but your psyche doesn't give two shits. They don't care. So your own psyche does not care if you have, a fast car, the great house. And once we start to suffer, I think it's even more so that the soul is like, oh, thank God, we're going to do some growth here.
Yes, that is so awesome.
Right? And I was just going to add like a personal experience. I didn't go to therapy. One of the catapults that I had, did I say that right? Is that right? Am I using that in the right way? Well, something that like a
yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Okay, sorry, I'm making up my own words. Years ago, I didn't want to go to therapy, and then after my brother was killed in a plane crash, a commercial plane crash, I needed help because I was a mess. I was one big neurotic wastebasket. I cried. I drank too much. I unconsciously ground down my back molars because I eat it in my sleep. My husband said, "You're doing it in your sleep."
Wow.
I pulled out all my eyelashes and then started going for my eyebrows. And I was so split off from my feeling function that the neurosis took over. And if one gift we can give to our patients is helping them be in touch with their feeling function. Because now we're in the world of psyche and psyche, soul. I'm using those synonymously. But psyche and soul, they want to heal. They want to heal.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I find that when I do work with couples so much, like getting in touch with that primary emotion that's really going on, that really helps.
Yes, you just nailed it. Because the parents can get in touch with their own brokenness, their own childhood wounding. Now we've got a good running start to help the child.
Yes, absolutely. Now, here's what I find, and this is going to go into the money conversation. Now, I find a lot of times parents are very willing to invest in mental health for their child. But when you start talking about them, it's like, oh, well, we don't have the money, or our insurance doesn't cover it. Or, there's all these excuses. That I have friends who will spend $1,000 on a bag. But not realizing that that's almost like 10 sessions of therapy right there.
Exactly. Well, I think it's all their defenses go up, right? As soon as you start to talk about them, especially where you and I practice at Serenity, parents are so glad they can walk down the main street and go get a coffee. Or some parents like, I'm going to go get a glass of wine. And I'll pick her up when she's done and she can drive home.
Exactly. Yeah, that's so true. So what I really hear you saying is that the money is just an excuse. It's really not about the money.
Most of the time. Right.
Yeah. Absolutely. There are times when you cannot afford to do anything outside of an absolute need. I get that.
Right.
But let's say you're not in that income bracket. You're outside of that income bracket. You're not in poverty. You have it. You just put it where you want to, and therapy is not where you want to put it because you might not be ready to address, like you may be somethable in
the space of denial.
Yeah.
It might be working for you. Maybe. And you could have a parent who said, like, I remember one time I had a dad and we kind of had this conversation about him maybe doing some therapy. And then it comes out, well, I've been in recovery with alcoholism and, so I've done a lot of work, but I've done my work. Like, this hasn't impacted my child at all. And I'm like, is that right?
Yeah. And that's the other thing that I hear too, that I think is very interesting, especially when you're in a relationship. And that is, I've done my work. It's like,
Mm.
your work is not done. What are you talking about?
It's never done. It's the same thing.
Right. It's a journey.
It's like Tiger Woods still takes golf lessons.
Yeah. You have to
Right?
constantly, and you're growing. And sometimes you run into different life situations that, you're done with the work that you needed to do on what happened in the past.
On
But
that.
as you live, new stuff is happening.
Amen.
And
Yeah.
then what happens is new stuff is happening, and then you're not processing it. So then you're probably taking it out on your loved ones. And
Mm.
then you're wondering why there's all this divisiveness in the
Right.
household.
Friction. Right.
Yeah.
It's like a war zone.
Yeah.
I've never met somebody so healthy. And I'm sorry, that includes everybody who's ever going to listen to this,
Including us.
especially me. I've never met anybody who could not benefit from doing just maintenance therapy. Like if you went once a month, and usually if you can get a patient to do that, they will often go, wow, I think I might need to come back sooner. And they'll look at you, the therapist, going, what do you think? Oh, that may be beneficial for you. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I feel like therapy is like a massage. And you know how you kind of tense,
Mm.
you're not in pain or like you don't know there's something going on, but you go get a massage and you just feel so good. And you're like, ooh, I need to do that more
Right.
often, right?
Right.
And that's how I see therapy for a lot of patients, because once they get in it, they're like, ooh, I just feel so much lighter, right? I just
Mm.
released.
Mm.
So yeah, that's how I see therapy, and I explain it to people because we
Mhm.
do help people shift. Like I do know that people have this negative connotation when it comes to therapy because they believe you have to stay in therapy for like a long time and it doesn't work and that kind of thing,
Mhm.
right? But what we do is a little bit different. And so it does work and people do heal and go on to shift in their life and have breakthroughs. And when those breakthroughs are happening, it just feels so good.
Mm. Oh my gosh, yes. And then there's hope. There's hope for the family because somebody was
Mm-hmm.
brave enough to say yes to therapy,
Yes. Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, what would you say if one person is going to therapy, but not the other? So, maybe one person is healing, but the other one isn't going to therapy. How does one deal with that if they're the one going to therapy?
I've never seen that with a good outcome, by the way.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I've personally, somebody else might, but
Yeah, absolutely.
I've never seen a good outcome, especially if it's between a couple.
Yep.
If one person starts to get healthier, they're no longer going to tolerate the dysfunction that occurred in the relationship,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Because now they're smarter
Yeah.
psychologically. And they're
Yeah.
like,
And their perspective is different.
right, because they're like, wait a minute, that's just crazy. And I can't collude with you on that delusion.
Yeah.
And with the parents, again, if they don't get therapy, well, the child's in therapy, which I always strongly recommend to the
Yep.
parents. I don't let them walk out of my office without a business card. And as you know, like if you're standing there, I will grab you.
Yeah.
Look
You.
at this.
Mm-hmm.
This is Kanae.
Yes.
And she's a very solid therapist. And I think this would be a really good fit.
Yep.
So,
You sure do. You absolutely do that.
yeah. Well, because I want the parents to also see, no, this is a big deal. And if you don't do some of your own work and pull it together, it's a very poor prognosis for your child. Most of
Yep.
the time, parents are willing to do it if they buy into the belief, which is true, that if they do their work, their child will benefit. If you can shift it, if you can reframe it to them looking at their own work through that lens, like, oh, so this really isn't about me working on myself, but if I could just have a few little putty and paste jobs on myself, then I can focus all about my child. My child's going to know that I'm getting healthier. If you can
Yep.
shift it so it's not all about them, but hey, you're
Yeah.
helping your child, they'll usually or often buy into it.
Yeah. Great point. And just like the relationship where you talked about marriage, well, if the child becomes healthy and the parents haven't, then they could become estranged. Like they could divorce their parents, basically. I don't want to be around
Mm-hmm.
you because now
Because
I
you guys are
become healthy.
nuts. Right.
Yeah.
And they look at the parents, they're like, oh my gosh, you guys are absolutely crazy.
Yeah. And now
Yeah.
you've invested in me, but you haven't invested in yourselves. And so I need to go separate myself from you so that I can stay healthy. Otherwise,
And not
I
get
will
pulled,
revert.
right. Not have that regressive pull,
Yeah.
where they're falling right back into the
Yep.
state of dysfunction.
Exactly.
Yeah. You can tell that we're passionate about this, aren't we?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah. And this is not phony passion. This is,
No.
you and I think, and of course, other people that practice that serenity, we're the
Yes.
real deal. We really believe in the work. I tell all my patients, I'm like, hey, I'm not sitting here as an arrogant therapist pointing a finger at you saying you need to be fixed, but hey, I'm good. I'm in the soup with you. I'm like, hey, my session is tomorrow with my therapist. So
Right.
we're all in it together.
Yeah. And what's so great about our office, I think we will call each other on
Mm,
our stuff too, you
mm,
know? And what I said in the beginning, that you guys are so humble.
oh,
I'm young in the business
mhm.
and you still let me call you on your stuff.
Yeah.
Or,
Oh my God.
yeah, like, hey, I noticed this. Like, hey, you're like, oh, thank you, and vice versa.
Absolutely.
You throw something out and I'm like, oh, yeah, thank you. Or if I have a question, I'm like, hey, I felt this way. Because I remember I
Mhm.
came to you like right before I was graduating and it was just heavy. And then
Mhm.
you just threw it back on me. Like, did you just listen to your words? Like, did you just hear what you
I
said?
did.
The universe is not going to give you anything else. I'm like, I need this. I want this. This is what I want. You're like, wait, you can't take on one other thing. Did you just hear
Oh,
yourself? The universe is doing you a favor, ma'am. Like, shut.
yeah. Yeah. It's like, yeah, let the universe do their work and you do yours, right? And
Right, right. Don't you go out there asking for more than you can handle, like you just
exactly,
said. So
because
it's
you're
just like,
already tapped out. Yeah.
yeah. So just like things like that we do for each other. And you have to have people like that around you. And I especially encourage this for couples, because if you have healthy couples around you, then you can be part of that 50% that succeed and stay together and
Mm,
not fall into the 50% that ended, or don't succeed because they're surrounded by people who are not doing their work.
exactly. And don't you find it's harder, not all the time, but sometimes as a therapist, it's harder to be at parties, social engagements where there are other couples. And I bet you can too. I can tell within the
Hmm.
first 10 minutes of talking to them, like, okay, so they've never had therapy,
Yep. Hmm.
right?
Well, Suzanne, the special gifts that you and I
Mm.
have. Sometimes I can tell in the first 10 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, and then I just don't do it.
Right.
Don't go there. Like, I just have to
Right.
like show quiet my spirit. I'm like, be quiet, be quiet, be quiet. You're at a party. Just party. Just
Right, right. Don't go into that mode, right? Which is
yeah.
kind of our normal inclination to do that. But
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
yeah,
But in my head, I am sort of psychoanalyzing.
well, I think that's just normal. And
Yeah.
I think we get out in the world, and it's just obvious to us. I'm like, oh, that kid's ADHD or that kid
Hmm.
has horrible anxiety.
Yeah, and because we're such healers, you mentioned a few minutes ago, we're passionate about this. And so when you notice that, it's like your heart is reaching out, your spirit is reaching out because you know that there's
Yes.
another way for that child. There is healing for that child.
Oh, Kane, absolutely. It's coming from a place of love.
Yep. Hmm.
Love, love, love.
Yeah. Because I
Mhm.
think that there's a certain maybe reputation that therapists are judgmental, but not all therapists are judgmental. Some are
No.
just noticing and observing and knowing that there's an option for that
Mhm.
person. And when you know that
Mhm.
there's an option, you want to at least tell them about it. Like, hey, you don't have to feel that anxiety. Hey, you don't have to deal
Mhm.
with PTSD. Like, you don't have to.
You don't have to stay in that place.
Yeah.
We save lives, don't we?
Yes.
I mean, years ago, my mother and I got into it about something, and she's passed away, but she had a lot of wisdom. But of course, not in this case, I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
But my mother said something about one of my brothers. And I said, well, how come he doesn't come over and help you or do this? And she goes, oh, your brother is very busy, honey. I mean, he has a very big job. I said, yeah, he does have a big job of making everyone else rich. I said, Mom, that does not diminish my work as a psychotherapist. She was kind of minimizing what I do. Oh, you just go see people and you talk. I'm like, what? But your brother has a really big job, and because we can measure that by how much he gets paid. And I'm like, Mom, I help people save lives, save their own life. And I've helped kids get themselves a step back further from doing a homicide, suicide, especially, with kids who are really anxious and maybe have some other stuff going on, and they have no way they feel to express aggression, that they're like, well, I'm going to go shoot the school up and then I'm going to kill myself. Or, we work with really heavy stuff.
Yes, absolutely. And when you can heal anxiety, because anxiety is painful. And when you can feel comfortable, when you can relax, then you want to live. But when you always are in that anxious, nervous, angry, place, you don't want to live. And you're so angry that you don't want others to live. But when you can heal that, you just save that person's life, plus everybody else that they would have harmed. And when I say harmed, I don't necessarily mean just with a gun, because just think about how harmful, how harmful mental health can be, because we spread that. It's almost like it's contagious, because if I'm sick or if I'm unhealthy, and then I bring into my life a certain amount of people and my unhealthiness spills over on them, now they need to go be healed. And now there's this, whole household or company, like say it's the CEO, and trickling that mental health down on everybody else, making them stressed and anxious.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But if we heal the CEO, then we can heal the rest of the company. Or if we heal the father, we can heal the rest of the family.
And the family doesn't have to stay stuck while the other person in the family is getting well. I think that's why you feel strongly about this and passionate, is because you've seen this, right? We've seen this together.
Yep,
so
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I have one more question before we end. I can't believe I took up this much of your morning, your afternoon.
Nay, stop it. This is for both of us, honey. And I love doing this with you. This is so much fun.
Yay.
Yeah, we could do this all the time. This is fun.
I know. It is so much fun.
It is.
So I asked you the first question that I ask every guest, and there's a second question that I ask every guest. And it's either the best marriage advice you've ever received or the advice you wish somebody would have told you.
So a couple years into my marriage, that 7-year itch that people talk about, I wasn't sure which way I was going to go. And my husband, by the way, he stays in therapy now too. So this is really kind of funny. The best advice that actually it was my mother. And she said to me, honey, no one can fulfill all of your needs. I was like, what do you mean? I got married. Somebody else can fulfill my needs, But always,
yeah, wow. Right? As simple as that was so powerful.
Yes, and any time that I feel myself getting frustrated with my husband, I'm like, Suzanne, how dare you? How dare you hold him up to that standard of fulfilling your every little need? I don't mean things like, honey, can you go get a water for me? I mean emotionally, like, you don't listen to me like my girlfriends do. Well, get over yourself. Go tell your girlfriends or your therapist.
Yep.
That was it. And I share that with patients. Like, you can't expect that person to meet all of your emotional needs. It's impossible.
It is.
And maybe that person really wants to be able to give you that. And even if they think they could, they can't.
Yeah. Yep. So true.
And who are you?
Because there are the martyrs out there who really believe that they'll be able to do it, but no.
To save and rescue.
Yep.
And it's just impossible.
Awesome. That is such great. I love it. That is so awesome.
I know, it's helpful, isn't it?
It is. It really is. It's almost like you hear that and you're like, oh.
it's like, oh, so I better stop doing this from that person.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Uh-huh.
I'm making a
Yeah.
mental checklist of like, oh,
Yeah.
but very important. And I think anybody listening can go, oh my gosh, how do I do that? And with whom do I do that? Where I expect them to meet all of my emotional needs.
Yep. Who do I
Because
do
it
that
ain't
with?
gonna happen. Yeah.
Yeah, because we do that with our parents. We
Mm,
do that with our spouses. And a lot of
absolutely.
times we do that with our children.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And isn't that
Yeah.
difficult to learn how to navigate? First, you have to be aware of it. And again, this
Yes.
therapy is so important because if you're not willing to take a flashlight and look at all those scary places, the dark places,
Mm-hmm.
how can you help someone else? How can you
Absolutely.
possibly even hope to be of service to someone else?
Yeah, you just can't really.
That's right. That's why therapy is so, so, so important.
Yep,
You
it
know,
really is.
for people to become conscious and to be aware.
Well, Suzanne, thank you for spending so much time getting deep. I mean, we went there.
I know. Oh my gosh, Kane, we did. But you're one of those people that gives someone like me the permission to do that.
Yay, thank you. Yeah, there'll be no small talk here. Won't be
Thank
talking
God.
about the weather.
I know. Doesn't that get? I mean, you need it. You can't always be in that
Right.
space,
No. Mm-mm.
And we need the frivolity and to laugh and the stupidness of things. We need to laugh, but
Yes.
but we
Yep.
can't do that indefinitely.
No, we need both. The
We
little
need
the
both.
little
It's a
harmony.
balance.
Yeah, we need
Oh,
the
I
heart.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, thank you, honey. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, please, please, please tell our listeners where they can find more information about you.
Yay! Okay, so if you're interested in what Kane and I do and what we're talking about, please visit www.Serenity House Sonoya, run all together, and go check our website out.
Yes.
Our profiles, our photographs. We have a mini bios about what we do, and in our particular situation, we're all contractors. So what that means is we don't have somebody to do our scheduling. We do that ourselves. So if you're interested, you would go to our website. We have our cell phones, and that's how you can schedule your first appointment so that you don't have to walk around the world being unconscious.
Mm.
And it will save every relationship, not just your one with your kids and your partner, but
Yes.
your siblings, your parents, everywhere.
Yep.
I tell patients who are like, oh, it's so expensive. And I'm like, honey, it's cheaper than a divorce.
It is much cheaper.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And I'll add to that Senoia, Senoia.
oh, thank you.
But Sonoy is also the town where they shoot The Walking Dead. If any of you are Walking Dead fans, that's
And
also the
yes.
town. Yeah.
No, sorry, honey. I was just so excited to say. And this is where it's the town of the Walking Dead. And then they can come to Serenity and be undead.
Yes. Come to life.
Yeah, we're like professional resuscitators of
Yes.
your emotional psyche.
And what's so awesome about that is if you're in Georgia and you do want to come visit us, you can come hang out with us because our office is like really cool and relaxing. And there's
Oh,
nobody who's been to Serenity House Sonoya who doesn't love it. I have never heard anybody, every single person who comes there, men, women, children, they're always like, I love this office. I know, right?
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you've done such a great job of making it just like relaxing and comfortable and home. Like you
Oh,
just feel so at home there.
it's a comfortable spot, isn't it? I mean,
Yes.
we nourish every nook and cranny of your being. We feed you. There's potential for massages or for energy work. Some of them have to be scheduled in advance. But we are the entire package of blending Eastern and Western thoughts together. So we do a little bit of woo-woo stuff, and then we have psychotherapy.
Yeah.
And there's nothing else like that down on the South End. There is nothing
Right.
like that. And then
That's
the
so true.
container, right? Serenity House, about 1840, it was built. The house is incredibly charming because
Yes.
all the wide wood floors are still intact, the shiplap walls, and every room has a fireplace. They don't work. We couldn't get the insurance on a place that old. but we have charming
Yes.
kind of faux fireplaces. First, I thought they were tacky, and then everybody left. I'm like, okay, good, we'll get more.
It's such a charming place. So you can visit the website,
Mm-hmm.
Serenity House Sonoya,
Yes.
or you can visit live and come on by and visit us.
Just walk in the door. The door's open. Come on in.
Yes. Awesome. Well, thank you, Suzanne. I will let you go back to doing whatever it is you do when you're not.
Thank you. This is awesome.
Yes. And so we definitely will have you back on soon to talk more because you're an expert in your field and you deliver so simply and so gracefully. So I definitely want to have you do that again.
Right back at you. You're my spirit sister. Right back at you.
Yes. It's time for 5-minute activation, a quick financial therapy session to get you activated and on your way to increasing the love and money in your marriage. So can I get 5 minutes of your time? Just 5 minutes for a financial therapy activation.
Today, we are focused on training, not complaining. This episode of 5-Minute Activation is to tap into that complaining part of you that needs to go away. It's time to train and stop complaining. This is how you do it. The first thing that I want you to focus on is finding a goal. Just one goal. Don't list all your goals. Just focus on one goal. Pick one. It could be a financial goal. It could be your business goal, professional goal. It could be a relationship goal. Just pick one goal and write it down. Now that you have that goal, the next step is to write down the tasks that you need to do in order to get to that goal. And just keep writing all as they flow out. Just put down all the things you can think of. And for the next 21 days, it is your job to do at least one of those things towards your big goal. Now, I say 21 days because the brain needs at least 21 days to create a habit. Now, it's 21 to 45, just depending on your brain. But if you do it for at least 21 days, you will start to get into that habit of training. So while you're doing this, though, here's the caveat. While you're doing this every day for 21 days, one thing towards your big goal, while you're doing this, what you're going to do is refrain from complaining. You are not to judge, suspend judgment and complaining over yourself, over your goal, over where you are right now, all of that. It's no need. Over other people. Oh, don't let me forget that one. So stop complaining because it does not serve you. Now, here's the thing. Some people are going to say, well, I'm just being real. That's how I really feel. I know, I've heard it. My patients say it all the time. And I say, that is not exactly how you feel. That is what your brain has told you to say so that you can stay in your comfort zone. If you continue to complain, you're going to get more of what you're complaining about because what you focus on expands. You've heard me say it and I'll say it again. And I probably won't stop saying it. Just 21 days. Now, after 21 days, if you want to go back to complaining, go ahead. But I'm asking you for 21 days to stop complaining. I'm also asking you for 21 days to start training. So you wrote down your one goal and the list of tasks you need to get to that goal. Now, the next thing is what do you need to do or who do you need to become in order to make this dream or this goal come true? What training do you need? Do you need to take a course? Do you need to find a mentor? Do you need to read a book? Do you need to get in front of somebody? Is there somebody that knows what you know that you just need to ask some questions of? What training do you need? Start doing it now. Let's say your goal was about money. Let's say your goal was to save or invest more, then maybe you don't know much about investing. So maybe you take a course, or maybe you read a book, or maybe you go to a financial advisor. And let's say you come up with the reason why you want to invest more. You attach a goal to this investment idea. And when you do that, what you're going to do is give yourself the push you need every single day, because if you really want it, if it's really your goal, you should be pulled. I said push, but really you should be pulled towards your goal. The difference between pushing and pulling is pushing is motivation, but it won't always be there. There won't always be somebody to push you. Pulling is activation. It's when you really want it. So pick a goal that you really want, not one that you're like, oh, it'd be okay if this, it'd be great if, no, I have to, by any means necessary. Like, no matter freaking what, this has got to happen. This is my goal. Got it? So write down your goal. Write the list of tasks in order to get to your goal. Stop complaining along the way. Just make yourself stop doing it. When you do it, just cancel it and think of something positive. And then once you start on your journey to not complain, then think about the things you need to do to train. Read a book, take a course, take yourself to the next level so you can get that awesome dream you dream of. Make it a reality. And that's our 5-minute activation for today. I am Kenneth Corder, best-selling author, speaker, and psychotherapist specializing in financial therapy, helping powerful people become power couples.
Hey guys, thanks for listening. If you want more love and money conversations, subscribe to this podcast. Also, tell your friends about us. I'll see you next episode. But in the meantime, head on over to presidentiallifestyle.com for more tips, tools, and resources. And go ahead and leave us a comment if you like. We'd love to hear from you. This show is not to replace professional counsel. The best advice comes from a professional you know. The topics discussed in this podcast are general in nature and are for entertainment and informational purposes only. We encourage you to meet with a professional to discuss your specific situation, whether financial or therapeutic. That's all for now. I'll see you sooner. Remember, no matter what anybody ever tells you, you can have wealth in all of its forms. Believe it, and you will soon see it.